Hi, welcome to my presentation on the paper Inducing Emotional Stress from the ICU Context in VR. My name is Sebastian Weiss, and I will present this paper also on behalf of my co-authors Steffen Busse and Wilke Heuten. With this work, we want to counteract the emotional stress ICU nurses will experience on the job. Prolonged exposure can result in sickness and ultimately affects the quality of care. First, we need to establish a common understanding of emotional stress. The APA Dictionary of Psychology defines it as the feeling of psychological stress and discomfort caused by situations of danger, threat, and loss of personal safety or by internal conflicts, frustrations, loss of self-esteem, and grief. In 2010, De Maria et al. Used emotional stress in a resuscitation scenario on a dummy with real actors representing family and colleagues, intervening on an emotional level. Participants showed a higher performance and knowledge retainment after 6 months during another training session in the task than those that were not exposed to emotional stress. Kleinsmith et al. Showed that, even with low immersion, participants grew empathetic towards virtual characters. In a within-subject study, they showed high empathy using the empathetic communication coding system as well as a questionnaire. What delineates this work from previous research is the combination of immersive VR with a virtual stress representation that is based on extensive literature research and expert interviews. We combine the approaches of Procher-Brood and De Maria with that stressor, which is considered one of the most impactful in the context of intensive care. Next up, I will explain how we chose the stressor used in this scenario. First, we began by reviewing the literature with respect to emotional stressors. We analyzed the results using Meyring's qualitative content analysis and abstracted the results, bundled and paraphrased them in order to categorize and finally encode them. Based on these, the second step was interviewing experts from the field. 5 ICU nurses were invited to a remote, semi-structured interview where the guiding questions aimed at emotional stresses from the ICU context and the sequence of situations with that stressor would usually unfold in. We chose to implement the stressor of having to comply with family requests because it was mentioned by all of our experts and was described as having a high emotional impact as it's directly confronting one's own moral compass, resulting in moral distress. The scenario was created following the 3-act structure as described as field. Within Act A, the exposition, participants are exposed to the situation and surroundings as well as the background story of the experimental scenario. In Act B, the confrontation, the central conflict is introduced and the main character has to overcome an obstacle. For Act C, the resolution, we took inspiration from De Maria's work as we offered this act with 3 different intensities. Participants that experience the first level of intensity are collectively called Group Alpha. Participants experiencing intensity levels 2 and 3 are Groups Beta and Gamma respectively. The artificial characters in the scenario are taken from Microsoft's Rocketbox, an open collection of pre-rigged human 3D models. Animations for walking and talking were taken from Adobe's Mixamo service. The environment and the interactions within were implemented using the game engine Unity 3D with the VRTK plugin. Participants used an Oculus Quest to experience the artificial environment. To further immerse participants in their role as a nurse, we provide several tasks from the work context, such as preparing something to drink for the patients, stocking perfusers, and copying vitals to patient file. We also created an audio environment that resembles the one from an ICU. The independent variable was represented through the presence and behavior of the patient's family, which differed to 3 different degrees. We measured the impact of the moral distress on our participants by collecting vitals that have been shown to be altered under the influence of stress. Additionally, we used subjective measures of stress in order to get a more complete picture of the participant's stress reaction. We invited 16 participants between the age of 21 and 60 to partake in our experiment, 8 of which are experienced in the ICU context. Here, I want to provide a schematic overview on the experimental setup. The experimenter controls the software on the MetaQuest using a custom Java-based control panel using a TCP/IP connection. The recording software is also a custom, in-house implemented Java software that offers an interface to sensing devices and is also able to record the signals in real time. The sensing devices are attached to the chest and upper arm of the participants and send data using Bluetooth. For subjective measures, we employed the PSQ-20 as well as a 7-point Likert item with a specific question. Furthermore, we asked participants to answer the iGroup presence questionnaire in order to see whether stressor also impacts the presence of a VR user. The experiment procedure included the written instructions as well as obtaining informed consent. Participants had time to ask about details in the how-tos and were then asked to fill out the pre-experiment PSQ-20 as well as the Likert item. We then helped them putting on our sensors and the VR goggles. Subsequently, experimenters started the VR tutorial that was used to help participants get accustomed to the interaction and locomotion. We only proceeded after participants stated that they felt confident in the virtual environment. Then, participants were shown a calming scene that was shown for 7 minutes, 5 for the vitals to normalize, and 2 more to obtain a baseline recording for the objective measures. Participants then experienced the scenarios where they spent between about 12 and 17.5 minutes in the virtual world, with an average of 14 minutes and 43 seconds. Finally, the headset was removed and participants filled out post-experiment questionnaires in the IPQ. Now, let's have a look at our results. All results were calculated using the R programming language, and data was tested for normality using a Shapiro-Wilk test. For objective data, this was done on a per-act and group base. Depending on the results, combinations of ANOVA and t-tests or cross-Wallis and Mann-Whitney-U tests were employed. Looking at the subjective results first, we find significant increases from pre to post measure with the Likert item in groups beta and gamma. The same is true for the pre and post measures with the PSQ20. The IPQ results show significant difference in subjective realism between the groups alpha and gamma, and we also calculated a positive correlation between the results of the PSQ20 and this subscale, indicating a relationship of experienced realism and the subjective stress level. The objective data were recorded during the VR scenes and also include the baseline. Recorded data was filtered by removing outliers above or below 1.5-fold the IQR distance from the upper and lower quartile respectively. While we can see trends from the data obtained that may indicate an increasing stress level, we did not calculate statistically significant difference between the groups or acts. In conclusion, we have successfully induced emotional stress in our participants using a Wizard of Oz style VR study. Considering the subjective stress level of our participants, we show that by changing the behavior of NPCs in a nursing context, we can increase the stress intensity of a VR scenario and thus evoke a more intense stress response. We hope that these results will help furthering our efforts in creating VR simulation scenarios in order to help prepare apprentice nurses for those job situations that are currently often trained using makeshift ICUs in a classroom. This technology can further be advanced by enabling a bidirectional communication with the virtual characters instead of the unidirectional approach we took. With this, I want to conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.